Well, welcome everyone to today's webinar. It's lovely to have you on screen with us. Thank you all for joining. I know at the time of recording of this, it's on the run up to the Christmas holidays, and it's been quite the year, hasn't it? And I'm really pleased to be joined today by Jennifer Brazier, CEO and founder of Complete Controller, and also author of the From Cubicle to Cloud book. So Jen, great to see you.
Thank you, Dan. Great to be here.
Brilliant. Now, for those of you who it's your first time with us, or you don't know who I am, perhaps, or Jennifer even, then my name is Dan Richards, and I'm with MyFirmsApp. And we've been working in the accounting profession globally since the early 80s. I've been involved since the late 90s, and we set this particular business up in 2012 to really help firms to connect to their clients through the digital devices, these smartphones that are now with them everywhere that they go. And it's been one big learning curve ever since. And there's been lots that we've discovered, lots that we've learned in the UK, in Australia, in America, and Jennifer's working very closely with us to make this app an enormous success and a great benefit to CPA firms and bookkeepers all throughout the States. So Jennifer, once again, thank you very much. And perhaps you'd be kind enough to introduce yourself.
Absolutely. I'm Jennifer Brazier. I'm the founder and CEO of Complete Controller, which I started over a decade ago, long before the cloud was really a thing, and right on the cusp of virtual accounting services becoming a thing. So I was right out there in the middle of the storm, figuring it out, much like what you said, Daniel. And in fact, From Cubicle to Cloud, the book that I recently wrote is really a portrayal of the bumps and bruises that I went through as an entrepreneur, building a cloud-based business long before we had all of the learning that we have today. And now Complete Controller is a very successful national business that serves as a turnkey CAS department for CPA firms that don't otherwise have a CAS offering, and we serve small businesses and busy households all across the nation. So it's time to give back. And so I really started with, the publication of my book coming up in late January to just get out there and let people know what our strategies are, what we've tried, and what seems to be working. So that's what I'm doing here today.
And it's great to have you. Thank you. And as you say, it's been a real exciting journey that you've been on. Some stuff that's worked brilliantly, other stuff that you and I have chatted about that hasn't gone so well, and I can definitely relate to that in our experiences as well. And so it's wonderful to be able to share out of both of those sides of the coin to help others be successful in what they're doing. And today's session is called 4 Ways to Be Successful on Your Cloud Journey. So in a moment's time, I'll pass over, Jen. It'd be lovely to hear some of those practical tips that you can share with the rest of us as to what to do. Now, before we get to that, we wanted just to take a moment to have a look at where we are. And it's not just because I'm a little kid at heart or I like pirates that I've chosen this picture, but because it's been one heck of a year and one real adventure this year. Some sadness, certainly for some. And for any of you listening today who've been personally affected by that, then our condolences are with you. But for others, it's remained a distinct challenge throughout the year. It's thrown up questions that we weren't expecting to have to answer. And it's thrown up challenges that we've had to face and to overcome. And some have done very well out of it, actually. There's been silver linings, and while others have continued to struggle through. And so this session, hopefully for those of you listening right now, is really there to focus in on those of you who want to say, well, okay, out of this year that I've had, how do I build on and build out of that into 2021 now? And if you're listening to this as the recording later, and it is the new year, how do you make this new year as successful as it can be, given what we've experienced and learned together so far? And one of the things I'd just highlight, and it was in a session I was listening to just yesterday with a lot of firms talking, and one of the questions or concerns that they raised was about reverting to type. And we can all do that as human beings, can't we? I know I can. My wife tells me that often, but I know we can revert to type. But for the accounting profession, those who have managed to move further on that cloud journey this year, who've managed to work from home remotely with the drop of a hat, who've managed to put systems in place and look after their clients still, and maybe even grow off the back of some of that, how do we keep building on that momentum now, rather than just going, oh, thank the good Lord that's over, and slipping back into reverting to type? So where are we now? We're at the end of a busy year. Where are we heading into? We're heading into something that has great opportunity if we choose to go after it. And Jen, I'm going to pass over to you, and maybe you can start to unpack some of that in a much more pragmatic way for us, which would be awesome. Thank you.
Excellent, Dan. Thank you so much. So can you see my screen there with the opening slide? Thank you.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
all.
I really like what you said about, taking this experience that we've had in 2020 and turning it into something that we can leverage for improvement in our businesses in the long term. I was really thinking about this last night, how rapidly we as an industry have had to conform. We're kind of slow starters as it is. Accountants are a little bit cautious. We tend to try to minimize our risk and take a look at what other people are doing before we make a jump. And I think that that's very reasonable. I think that there's nothing wrong with that, but it definitely takes us a while to decide that we want to adopt something. And what 2020 did to us is it really gave us that moment where we realized that the cloud isn't just the future, the cloud is now. And if we're not in some way moving toward that technology and figuring out ways to work with our staff and work with our clients within that new environment, then we will be left behind. So it's kind of, innovate or die. And I know that, those sudden changes, they can be such a shock to the business, but I think we can turn it into something good. I think that we want to look at ways to do it, though, that aren't too stressful and that allow the business to progress. So I want to kind of get to the first slide here. Definitely, I think we can all agree that technology is the frontier that we are going to be on. This whole idea of working in the cubicle, of pen and paper, it's as old as ledger books, were before QuickBooks and NetSuite came along. So we really are rapidly evolving and we need to keep up with it. But how do we do that without really stressing the pocketbook and making sure that we're putting our money in the right place at the right time so we're not spending it and then wishing that we had spent it somewhere else. So I think the first thing that we want to do in our cloud journey for the accountants that are watching is let's take a look at how you identify. And what I've done for you is I've broken down the different types, the different stages in that journey to the cloud into 3 segments. So the first one is you're ready for the journey. You realize that this is something that you need to do. This is important to you, but you haven't really put anything in place yet, right? The next one is you're in migration. And I like to call it that because it's just this myriad of different things. You might have a few pieces that you kind of put in place really fast because pandemic, because, oh no, or maybe you've already put some in place, but you just don't have that full picture yet. Everything isn't working together beautifully, and you're kind of in between. And then we have leveraging the cloud. So for those that are leveraging the cloud, you're going to identify yourself because you have already put a lot of effort into moving your processes to the cloud. And you may be at a point where you're thinking about whether or not you're going to create a customer-facing platform, how you're going to manage and monitor your staff more closely, and also how you can leverage now this new environment to be able to increase revenue. So we're going to go through these different phases. We're going to talk about the tools that are, from my experience, have worked at these different stages, and then also, what's popular and what won't hurt the pocketbook too much. So let's take a look at Ready for the Journey. So, if you really haven't made that commitment to the cloud yet, and you know that it needs to happen, there are a few things that you want to be taking a look at. First of all, you want to understand that the cloud is going to open some things up to you that are very different from where you are now in this really local office environment. You're now going to be open to a national or even global market. And this works in a couple of different ways, because when you think about national or global market, you need to think about staffing. And then you also need to think about client services. So with staffing, now that you can go global, some of the things that you can consider are, do I need to hire my staff in my local city where it might be more expensive? Can I hire staff elsewhere? And how can I leverage that to my advantage, right? Because quite frankly, the cost of living is lower in certain states of our country and certain regions of other countries where right it's smack in the middle of the city where you found it to be very smart to put your office, a few years ago might not be such a great pool for hiring in today if you have other options. The other thing to think about is the client. So if you're going to be serving clients that are outside of your immediate area, you really need to be looking at what government, regulatory standards and security standards apply based on the different areas where these clients are going to be. One of the things that I ran into when I expanded my business outside of California, which is where we originated and were headquartered, was that as I moved into different states, we couldn't call ourselves an accounting service. We had to call ourselves a bookkeeping service, which we are a bookkeeping service. So that wasn't a big leap for me. But understanding that you're not allowed to do certain things in other areas is really important. And it's a lot of homework to do when you want to really kind of get that national or global reach. So something to think about there. You also need to create your process model. So the best way to do this, if you're a solopreneur or you're a small office, is to look at everything that you're doing on a daily basis and find that thing that you can delegate and peel it away. And you just start peeling it away like an onion. So for me, it was, the first role was going to be, I'm not going to do the bookkeeping. So I'm going to train other people to do that. I'm going to create that role within the company. And then the next thing was, I'm not going to do the controller oversight and support to the bookkeeper and client. I'm going to have that controller role by other people. And so I peeled that off. And then the next thing was quality control, COO, operations roles. Peeled those off. So think about the different roles that you have in your company. If you're a solopreneur, you're probably doing everything right now. So think about what you would like the company to look like as it grows so that you can start to model for that. Make it scalable. So speaking of models, as you're developing your model here in the cloud, I want you to think about the possibilities. Maybe right now you're working hours for dollars, you're in the office. Maybe you have processes in place that depend on snail mail or are counting on somebody being there at the reception desk in the morning. I want you to get outside of the box and start to think about how you might develop your process if you didn't have to have all of those traditional constraints in place. And it's really quite freeing. The cloud is a great place. There are so many integrations, so many things you can take advantage of. And so really the first thing is think about how you can get outside of that model. The other thing is, as you're scaling up, you want to make sure that you have quality control in place. So you have to look at, if I can't walk into my office and hear the buzz of the employees working and sit down at my desk and look at the work that's being produced in, pen to paper format, then how do I manage quality control? So as you're developing your process model and you're thinking about how to make it scalable, that has to be something that is right there. The reason is that in this cloud environment, one of the first things that you could easily lose is the quality control, simply because you are not physically there. You can't feel it. So you have to find other ways to feel it. And I recommend that you have KPIs sent to you on a regular basis so you know who's doing what. And we'll get into that as we get into a little more kind of into migration. So Then developing the client acquisition strategy. So right now, your client acquisition strategy might be you're a member of the local chamber of commerce. Maybe you go to regular networking meetings, and you know your local bankers, or you know your local. If you're maybe an accounting management service, maybe you know your local CPAs, and you get referrals from them. But what can you do in cloud? Well, you can do anything, right? Really, there are no boundaries. So now you have to think about, how am I going to push through all of the static that's out there? So we'll come back to that because we have a really good solution for that. Okay, so next stage, we're in migration. What does that look like again? We're ready to get rid of that traditional model. We're ready to do something new. We know we need to do it. And for those of you that are in migration, you've already done a lot of it. So perhaps what you've done is taken care of having your email on, let's say, Google or Office 365. I would recommend Office 365 just because of governance, by the way. Or perhaps you have your document storage within like a Dropbox or Box, which is, again, much better for governance because you can adjust permissions and security levels and authentication levels to really meet the ethical standards within our industry. So you might have some of these pieces, but they're a bit of a hodgepodge right now. So let's talk about what your next steps would be if you want to advance your company on that migration to the cloud. So the first thing is determining what's already in place. And I would just map it out. You know what you've done, you know how you've adopted what. Some pieces might feel like they don't integrate with others. As you're looking at what you already have and determining what gaps you have, I would encourage you to be okay with innovating, changing something out that isn't working, finding that thing that integrates the very best. One of the first places you want to really kind of get away from that brick and mortar is with your phone system, right? So no longer are we using these old phone systems. No longer are we just tethered to, direct cell phone numbers. You don't want your staff giving out direct cell phone numbers anyway, because what if they're no longer your staff in a week and your clients have their cell phone? So you want to come up with a cloud-based phone system. I love Grasshopper, and through this whole thing, I'm just going to drop names because I'm sharing with you what worked for me. Do your research, find out what's going to work for you. The reason I love Grasshopper is because it makes sense in terms of dollars and cents, and it allows me to add as many extensions as I want, lets me get faxes. It's kind of cool, and it's all in the cloud. So my staff members never have to give out their cell phone. Their extension goes directly to their cell phone no matter where they are in the world. So very helpful. Look for those pieces, look for those gaps, and then create solutions that are elegant. Then change. So I just said, oh, well, maybe you should change. Maybe you're gonna, like, right now you're in Google and you're like, Gmail and all of that, that's not as secure as I'd like it to be. I'd like to have, a little bit more security. I'd like to move to a client server, an email client server that is a little bit more robust. And so you're going to migrate. Well, whenever you change, you're going to have change management issues. You have your staff that probably won't like change. You have your clients that won't like change. And you're going to need to manage all of that. And that's not always fun, right? So what I would recommend in this case is that you lay out some proposed changes. You found those gaps, and then you bring it to your staff and even bring it to your clients and let them know that you're considering filling this gap. If it's client facing, of course. If it's staff facing, bring it to the staff. Let them give some feedback. Let them learn about the pros and cons to this particular thing that you're doing. Let them be a part of the change management. Because when they've given their feedback, even if you don't adopt whatever their opinion is, they feel like they've been heard, and they are more likely to adopt the change. And quite frankly, if your staff doesn't adopt it, the clients won't adopt it, because the staff are going to be the strongest evangelists for those tools that you want the clients using that they're not used to using, which is a change. So get people on board and then set goals and then incentivize them moving toward those goals. So for us, one of the biggest changes that we made recently was the conversion. We hosted QuickBooks Desktop and Enterprise for years within our cloud environment. And we actually created a client-facing platform and a staff-facing platform so that everyone could work within there with proper governance, so they couldn't see what everybody else was doing. Well, recently, and it took us a while because we wanted to make sure that the QuickBooks Online program was better than the QuickBooks Desktop program before converting, we've now converted our clients over to QuickBooks Online. This was not a fast process. This process took a good year and a half. We had to lay out what it was going to look like. We had to determine how to kind of find those early adopters in our clients by putting it out there and offering them free licenses for a while to see if they would just jump right on the bandwagon. Then we had to go into the ones that you really have to train and dig into. And then we had to bring over the late adopters by saying, hey, listen, if you're not going to adopt, it's going to cost you more money. So we went through phases. So don't imagine that this is going to happen immediately. It's not an instant gratification thing. It is really creating a process for change, bringing the staff first, and then bringing the client. Okay, so as you're thinking about that, and that's what we were just talking about, overcoming friction, right? Your primary friction is going to come from your staff, guaranteed. The cool thing too about new tools is that new clients don't know about the old tools, and they don't know that you didn't have tools. So they don't know about your old ways. So the greatest thing about that is that all new clients will adopt the new tools, no questions asked. They might grunt and groan a little bit if it's not what they're used to in terms of working with a CPA or working with an accounting service, but don't worry about it. They're going to adopt what you tell them to do if they want to use your service. So it's going to be on your terms. And by doing that, you can get that higher adoption rate. And we'll talk about overcoming friction a little bit later as well. So now leveraging the cloud. This is my favorite because these are the companies that have already really put maybe their entire client and accounting services department in the cloud, or their entire audit department in the cloud. And they're looking at how they can now leverage that and do something even better. And so one of the things that I'd like you to consider if you are that person is looking at a new pricing model for work that you can provide on subscription. I'm seeing more and more CPAs create subscriptions for oversight to the work that we do, and then partner with us to handle the client accounting services, which is bookkeeping, financial record storage, and performance reporting, and only that. So then the CPAs are coming in over the top. They're providing that tax preparation, that planning and strategy. They're also doing audits, some of them, some wealth management, over the top. So sometimes they'll charge that management fee, which is very cool because then they have that ongoing stream. Anything that is periodic can be subject to subscription. So think about what you're doing periodically for your clients and think about ways that you can bring value periodically. What if we were to abandon the model of just going in once a year and handling the tax preparation, or going in twice a year, once for a tax strategy session and then once for tax preparation? What if we touched our clients more frequently? Clients are more open to that these days because they're used to that relationship type of technology. So they're used to Facebook, they're used to Instagram, they're used to all of these technologies that are creating relationships for them. So if you can offer your relationship in a tech-forward way and make it periodic and create a type of subscription model around it, they'll be very open to that. So this is your opportunity, especially as you're adding more value, right? Then developing processes with efficiency and quality. So you're going to want to look at this point at what am I using to support my processes? Do I have a practice management software? Do I have a CRM, which we'll talk about a little bit later? Do I have something that is in place that is allowing me to quickly see where the work is in progress, whether so-and-so has done what, whether the quality is there. For us, we started way back when, which is checklists in Excel. And we just, for our periodic closing, we had a checklist. For onboarding a new client, we had a checklist. For terminating, every kind of phase in that client relationship. And then also in the staff training. And now, of course, we've converted that over to a database so that we're putting all of that information in there, and we're able to query information about our clients, our relationships with them, how they've changed over the years, that type of thing. So it's very valuable. So I would encourage you, if you don't already have something in place, to think about and shop for something that will work for you. You don't have to do the proprietary thing like I did. I did it because we had the checklist, they were working, the database was the next thing that made sense for me. But there are plenty of practice management softwares out there to choose from for our industry, and very robust ones. And I would just caveat that you want to pick something that encourages communication with the customer and regular touch points, because that's going to be a big part of fostering and nurturing that client trust. In order to nurture client trust when you are not sitting across the desk from them, you can't look them in the eyes. You're not going to have a highball with them after the office closes. You need to give them a safe place to give you feedback on a regular basis. You need to reach out and let them know that you care. So often as accountants, first of all, many of us are introverts. So we're not about like having to start that conversation all the time, right? Because we don't really want to get in a conversation with you. And, it might be something that we're not expecting. And it might turn into you asking questions about something that maybe we don't have the answers to yet. I get all of that. I'm an introvert. But we have to put something in place that makes it safe for them to give us that feedback. Email, yeah, that's great. It's okay. But they get a lot of emails, right? I mean, don't you get a lot of emails? So they're getting a lot of emails too. So maybe that could be one touch point. And then another one needs to be perhaps a phone call. And then another one perhaps on a different platform, such as a message or a text. When you're creating all of these kind of safe places, then you're building trust, even if the client is not responding to it. Because in their mind, and you have this experience, when you get that, hey, will you let us know how, your doctor's office visit went, or how your tech support session went with, our company. When you get that email, what you're thinking is that they want to know, right? They care. And that if I tell them that somebody's going to do something about it, and imagine how much trust that builds. So within a cloud environment where you can't just kind of sit and chat back and forth across the table, you have to create that environment for them, because otherwise the clients will leave and they will never tell you why they left. They'll be gone before you even know they're gone, right? Have you ever had that experience where all of a sudden you're not doing taxes for this client anymore and you had no idea? What did you do? And they're never going to bother to tell you, because now they're already gone and they've shopped and they've made their selection and they've made all these decisions completely outside of their relationship with you because the trust wasn't there. The other thing you want to look at with leveraging the cloud is building the top line, right? I mean, we're in the cloud. We can do anything. And so why wouldn't we want to leverage our other relationships with our vendors that are out there, providing tools and providing programs to make your cloud environment work really beautifully? Why not have alternative revenue relationships with them? So if we're accountants, we have companies like ADP, Gusto, Paychex, to name some of the American companies that are really, dealing with the payroll and HR. They all have revenue programs, all of them. Cloud companies all have revenue programs. Hosted Microsoft programs all share revenue. Anyone can become a provider and sell the subscriptions. If you're thinking about creating a client-facing platform, anything that you have on that platform, you can then get paid for by the vendor for hosting it for your client. And you're hosting it for your client to bring value. So it all makes sense. So just start thinking about it that way. And I know that as accountants, we kind of get into that, oh, I don't know if I want to, kind of leverage my relationship with my client to make more money. But I'll tell you what, in that initial contract with your client and in any ongoing communications, as long as you have the proper disclosures, the client doesn't care. And believe me, if the client's an entrepreneur, they already know that you are leveraging these relationships. And by the way, if you're going to take the time to take the training, to learn about a program, to integrate it into your system, to teach your staff about it, and then to evangelize it to your clients, you'd better be getting paid for it. So the cloud really opens up lots of opportunities for this because we have a client-facing solution. We actually can get paid by integrated applications. We have a wholesale account, of course, for our QuickBooks. So we're getting a slice of that. And then we're also able to pass along that lower than retail pricing to our clients. So while we're making a little bit, they're also getting that advantage. So you can really kind of play with your business model and find different ways to create revenue stream. And I would encourage you to try to have your alternative revenue streams pay for your tech. That is a goal of ours here at Complete Controller. It's my new goal. And we're about a third of the way there right now. So wish us luck. As you're doing it as well. So I want to show you all of these at once here. Oh, on this last slide, I want to bring you back to what they're doing at MyFirmsApp and why I'm so passionate about bringing this solution to the accounting market. It's very important to make sure that you are developing a client acquisition strategy. Remember that from that very first slide? That's one of the first things you're going to do, even if you're not even yet in migration. Well, one of the things that we do here at Complete Controller is we pre-qualify our leads on the phone when we're talking with them by having them download the phone app. What does that do for us? It lets the potential client see how tech forward we are. It lets them see that we are going to give them the tools to work with us. It makes us look good, and it allows us to brand ourselves on their phone for as long as they keep the app on there. And quite frankly, I mean, some of them might download it and then just get rid of it later, but at least we had that experience. And now they're thinking, man, Complete Controller, they're a pretty cool company. Like they have their act together, right? They're giving me everything that I need in order to be able to work with them. What about this overcome friction? Well, one of the areas where it's classic for us to have friction as accounting firms is getting documentation and information from our clients. One of the things that the app has done for us here is it's allowed clients to be able to send receipts to us, fully categorized, fully integrated with QBO, be able to track their miles, send it in for reimbursement, or track it just for IRS, regulatory standards, right? There's calculators, we can keep in touch with them, and that's the next one. Foster and nurture client trust. So remember when I was talking about creating those touch points, creating that trust by making sure that you're reaching out in different ways and creating opportunities for them to be able to let you know how they're thinking and what they're feeling. Well, with the app, you can actually send messaging directly to individual clients if you want to, which is really cool, especially if it's personal and it comes from the CEO or whichever partner is managing their account. You also in the app, for us, we put a little, let us know how you're thinking about us, and then they can click on it. And when they do, it takes them to a 5-star review. So, I mean, they also have a refer a friend there, which is the ultimate show of trust. So there are different ways that you can leverage that to be able to create those spaces for trust. And then, of course, it's easy to implement and it's really easy on the budget. So, I know that you noticed that as we worked through those stages, we got from, hey, my email's in the cloud and I'm a box subscriber and I keep my clients' documents secure, to now I have a platform and my staff is working in the cloud, to now I'm thinking about doing a client-facing platform. Well, that's all across the board in terms of budget, right? And so if you want to advance that technology and look tech forward and give your clients that feel and that trust in what you're doing as a firm, I would highly recommend that you do something that doesn't cost a whole lot, but gets you all of that return on your investment. And so I really want you to listen to what Dan has to say, because I think that this is definitely something that you want to look into. I highly recommend it. It's worked so well for Complete Controller. And thank you so much for listening to me today. Hopefully something I said sparked something in you, an action item that you're going to actually move forward with in 2021, and you're going to bring your firm to that next level. I want you to know that From Cubicle to Cloud, my new book, back here, you can go to jenniferbrazier.com. I have workshops. I do deep dives into all of these strategies, and I help companies with modeling how they're going to get from here to there. So it's very fun, and I look forward to seeing you at one of those. And of course, if you're not ready to do client accounting services in-house yet, but you would like a reliable and reputable partner who can handle that for you and give you transparency into your clients' books and records, then please consider Complete Controller. Thank you so much for having me, and I hope that this has been a good experience and that 2021 is very successful. Dan, I'll give it to you.
Brilliant. Lovely. Jennifer, thank you so much for that. It's been fabulous to listen to. And I've learned stuff along the way, which is not to be surprised at all, but it's you and I get to talk a lot, which is great, and I get to talk to firms all around the world. But how you've stepped us through a number of those things has been tremendously helpful. We do have some opportunities for questions, folks, before we move on a little bit further. So, and I know a couple of you have only just joined in as well, so welcome to those late arrivals. It's great to see you. Now, on the control panel on the right hand side of your screen, there should be a grey bar that says questions. If you type away inside there, say hello if you want to, or just ask a question, you're very welcome to. There's been a couple that have come through. So Jennifer, before we move much further, I'm going to come to one of those. This one is from a lady called Sarah, or Sarah, forgive me if I pronounce that wrong. And this one, I think, is relating to one of your earlier slides, Jen, where you were talking about explaining things to your staff, if you're going to take on new systems inside your staff and get their view on it. But also, if you're going to do something that's client-facing, talking to clients. And as a Brit, I can tell you I'm very pleased to read this question out, because it talks about Henry Ford. And so it's that wonderful example of Henry Ford, where it says, if I'd asked my clients what they wanted, or my customers what they wanted, they'd have asked for faster horses. So I think the question, and forgive me if I'm wrong there, Sarah or Sarah, is how much do we ask our clients permission to do things? How much do we suggest that this is the best way of going ahead?
I love that question. Yeah, for the client-facing side of things, what we've done is we've decided to innovate in a particular area. So let's say it was with, changing the filing cabinet from a static, server-based item to something that had its own governance and then could be web-based and accessible by the clients through the app. So when we did that, what we did is we went to the clients and we said, this is what we're thinking about doing. We're going to do an e-filing cabinet. We're going to make your filing cabinet accessible to you through the app or anywhere that you have a box account. And we're going to make sure that your stuff is still just as secure as it is right now, but you can get to it without that VPN. Is that something that you're interested in? So we're really feeding it to them and then asking them, does that make sense for you? And if they're like, I don't care about that, or get in there anyway, then we would be like, okay, well, maybe that's not where our money and time is best spent. But typically we kind of have a feel for what is going to be the next thing, and of course, if we get that response, oh yeah, I'd really like to try that. Even with converting to QBO, it was, hey, we're going to start to convert some clients over to QBO because it integrates with more applications. We're seeing a trend toward, better ability to do the reporting than in the desktop. Intuit's no longer supporting desktop. Is this something you'd be interested in? A lot of people said no, but some said yes. And so those that did, then we took through the change, we learned something more, and then we were able to adapt to the others.
So what I took out of that, amongst other things, was your enthusiasm. So it sounds to me like when you present something to the client, explain why it's good, do it enthusiastically, and then if you want to, ask them if they're up for it. But for the most part, it's saying that here's why it's going to be good for you and why we think you should go in that direction. Is that about right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when we're very first introducing the idea. What's that?
Yeah, so I was going to say, as a customer of an accounting firm, I can attest to it as well. We trust you guys. We do. And so if you turn around to us and say, look, this is how we want you to do something now, then normally it's received with a positive, unless it doesn't make any sense at all. But you're going to know me well enough to know if it makes sense to suggest it in the first place. So yeah, suggest things with confidence, enthusiasm, and normally you'll get a positive answer from the guy on the other side of the table. Another quick question here, Jennifer, is, again, this was something you mentioned about a length of time. I think, if I recall what you said already, about there was about 18 months. It was the moment you were talking about. But this is from Jonathan. It said, how long did it really take to how long did it take to really start to make progress, and how do you keep partners and staff on board and not resistant?
Absolutely, a great question. So let's use the example that took 18 months, which was the QBO conversion. So first of all, when this was originally presented to our staff, they were hugely resistant. I don't think really any accountants liked QBO over desktop necessarily. One of the things that they were resistant because of was lack of efficiency. They felt like it took longer to work in the QBO platform. The other thing was lack of support. They had to call the support line and it would just take forever for them to get the support that they needed. And sometimes they wouldn't get the answer on that first phone call. And then what we did is we tackled it with going to the vendor and saying, how can you make this easier for us to be able to adopt? And the reason we did it was because our tech costs for hosting desktop and trying to integrate applications were so much greater than they would be if we were using QBO, and those applications that often were starting to be written for the QBO API were integrating seamlessly. So we tackled first with our accounting staff the clients that had integrated applications, because the accounting staff at that time were having to go from one to the other, right? And there was that manual entry, or there was a bridge, or there was a macro, or there's something that was having to be done in order to get data from one place to another. So our path was, let's start by recognizing that you have these concerns, getting you the support that you need, and then telling you which ones we're going to do based on why it's better for you. So rather than we're going to convert all the clients, let's start with the ones that will do it first. We actually beta tested the QBO conversions on clients that had integrated applications, and only after reaching out to Intuit, and we have a large firm team that deals directly with us and gives us direct training, and we never have to call the Pro Advisor line again. So those two were those convincing moments. The other thing is support them with training. Pay for them to get the training they need. So they all went in and they did the QuickBooks Online training through Intuit. Our Pro Advisor, or our team, offered direct training on anything that we wanted to know, fully branded for our firm. So, that's going to be a big one in adoption. Then once they were on board, we were able to be like, okay, who else? Who else? And then once they got better and better at working in it, then they started to say, oh, I want this client on it, so it started to turn the tide.
Yeah, really helpful that, really very helpful to hear. You mentioned a couple of times what I would call segmentation, chunking that client base down and going where the ground is easier first and then building through. So that sounds like excellent advice as well. And also from what you're saying there, maybe go for the quick wins. Now, for you, it might have been those clients with integrated apps already that you could use with QBO, and that presented a win, something that worked. And I guess that success you were able to build on going forward internally as well, hence back to the question. But it might not be something as complicated as that. You could do anything, I suppose, to find that quick win, but get something in there that looks good, feels good, and is working, and then go for the next thing thereafter. Does that sound about right?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Super. Now we're going to just step on a couple more slides here, and there's another question that's just come through from another Jennifer, actually. And so I'll come back to that one in just a moment. And anyone else who wants to ask a question, feel free to do so in that questions box in the control panel on the right-hand side. We'll stop in just 3 or 4 minutes' time to pick up on those things as well. One of the things that Jen has been talking out of is these touch points that we have with clients. Now, the ACCCA here, one of the largest professional bodies globally of accountants, they recently ran a report across their membership, which is more than 200,000. And one of the things that came out of that was those firms who were succeeding, who were really getting the best out of client retention, out of client acquisition, and client engagement. So 3 things there highlighted the importance of those touch points. And Jennifer, you were sharing a few things there about how email, okay, we all get tons of that. Maybe it's not quite so effective any longer, but that might be one. Telephone calls, those sorts of things that are going on, even when they're logging into portals, that's another touch point. Sending out messages and marketing communications can really help with that as well. And one of the things that we found out of 2020, and as we move into 2021, if you're listening to the recording of this in the new year, that's great. You know, we've learned a lot through these lockdown arrangements where suddenly we are much more remote and much more disparate as a society. And when we see Maslow's hierarchy of needs, many of you will recognize that name. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs on that triangle there, the importance of connectivity and relationships have really shone through, haven't they? At that family level with our kids and our partners, with broader family, within business, with customers and with staff members who are more disparate now as well. And that's where you can start to make quite an impact and do so pretty easily with what Jennifer was sharing at the end there about using the apps. And so that's where we would come in. It's about working tirelessly for you to keep your clients closer, create those points of connections, help to build and enhance those relationships whilst you're still busy doing the things you're doing and doing all that great stuff that Jennifer's been talking about in this last half hour or so. So being able to be where they are on their mobile devices and build those connection points. What's the outcome of those things? Well, here's some data points to help you. Over the last 6 months, the best part of 3,000 firms around the world, just like yours now, have enjoyed more than 3 million digital interactions that we've created for them with their clients. So those touch points are working and they're delivering for them. More than 3 million of those now. We've also seen the engagement of content inside the Firms app. So the messages that you send through that we can do for you, or you can send yourself as well, that's increased by more than 3,600%. We've seen that rapid increase that you can see on screen there with the document scanning tools and the use of engaging tax content as well. So there's a real demand for this from your clients. And of course, it's going where it's easy for them. It's on the screen of their mobile phone. It's what they're used to. And everyone and their granny now is on Zoom, aren't they? Or on some sort of connection tool to speak with family members wherever they may be. So if that's something you want to find out more about, how the tools, how that communication, how that tech forward and engaging points that Jennifer was describing about might be able to help you, then really happy to chat further and share ideas together as well. Now I'm going to come back to this other question from the other Jennifer on the line just now, which was saying, and perhaps it's a bit more appropriate now actually, given what we've just touched on there, but it was saying lots of people speak about advisory. I take that to mean giving good information off the back of real-time and relevant data. Would you describe it otherwise? And is that another way to leverage and charge more too? So what's your thoughts on that, Jen?
Well, my answer is absolutely. Now, in this time of advisory, Complete Controller, our company has decided that we want to stick with the client accounting services. And so our model is to push to the expert for the advice. So when we see a need, then that gives us an opportunity to touch that client's expert, whether it be their CPA, their tax accountant, their payroll and HR company, maybe their business attorney, and push to them so that they can then fulfill their role, just because our philosophy is that a team is better than a one-stop shop. But for those of you that are the advisors, that are the experts, absolutely 100%. I want to say that one of the reasons why clients do not use the advisory services of their CPAs and their attorneys more often is because every time they call, every time they email, it costs them money. And it's not money that perhaps they budgeted for, or they don't know how much it's going to cost them. And it's kind of, off-putting when you're ready to go buy that car, and you want to call your CPA, but you're not sure if they're going to charge you half an hour to give you advice on how to structure it. Now, of course, we know as accountants that just that half-hour investment of time that they pay for is going to save them probably monumental amounts in taxes, right? But they don't see it that way. So by creating an advisory subscription or a management subscription over the top of that relationship that you have with them, you can create a safe place for them to come to you regularly. And that could be something that's very valuable, increases trust, and increases client touch.
Brilliant. Thanks. Really good to hear. Really good. Folks, we're just coming up on the hour now. So others of you who've asked questions, apologies we've not been able to get to you live. We do promise to come back to you personally afterwards as well. What I'm going to do is just put up this final slide. What I'd like each of you to do, please, so that we know, each of us, how best to help you next from here, is just to answer this poll, please. If you would like to find out more about Jennifer's workshops and the Cubicle to Cloud book and how you might be able to get that experience, to learn more about how it works in your firm, tick on there. You can choose more than one option here, folks, so tick on there. If you'd like to explore the outsourced cash solution that Den offers as well, of course, I'm sure she'd love to chat that through with you as well. Likewise, if you want that app for your own firm, that's low cost for you to implement, that you get all the training around, that we help you to launch it to your customers, that you get the forward-looking and the tech-advanced relationship with your clients, that you've got a distribution channel for bringing everything together into one place, and that meaningful, insightful content is shared, you can tick on that option as well, and we can chat ideas through. And finally, if you've just been listening and you've enjoyed it, I'm pleased, I'm sure Jen is as well, you can just tick that last option and we can keep in touch over time. But if one of those top three would really help you with your next step as you look to progress how you're taking your firm, then we'd love to chat further just now. So let's see, I think I'm just going to give it another 5 seconds, folks. Well, almost everybody's voted now. If you haven't voted, please choose on those. Let us know which one is going to help you best. I'll give it just 3 more. 3, 2, 1. Great. Right, I'll close that poll down from there. That's lovely. So folks, again, at the time of presenting this, it's the 8th of December. We're fast approaching the Christmas period, and you guys have just come out of Thanksgiving. So we do hope that you have an amazing time with your family, however you can connect over the Christmas break. And if you're listening to this in the new year, we hope you have an amazing 2021. If you want to talk further on any of these things, Jennifer and I would be very happy to jump on a Zoom call and just share ideas and talk from there. And Jennifer, thank you very much for what you shared today. It's always valuable to hear your story and what some of us can replicate.
Thank you so much for having me, and good luck with all of you. Be well and prosper.
Awesome. Thank you.